Our final theme is performing high. This theme, as you will see from the film and interviews, touches on a few different interpretations. The high of performing is addressed in an interview with Michaela Washburn. Performing while high is discussed in relation to the experiments of Stefan Kreit. And then in the movie Hair, we are exposed to the act of playing the role of someone who is high. First, we're going to take a look at the work of Stefan Kreit. Stefan is a Montreal-based actor and theater artist whose work with Momentum Theater led to his experimental, practice-based research project, Les Laboratoires Kreit. In this performance/experiment, Kreit directs a series of performances wherein the actors rehearse their roles, perform them sober, and then perform them again under the external influence of drugs, alcohol, or sex. In my discussion with Stefan, we talk about this experiment and about the craft of acting. Then I do a short interview with Michaela Washburn, a Toronto-based actor who has won multiple awards, including most recently a 2018 Dora Award. In our interview, we talk about what it means to get high from performance and what role that performance high plays in the craft of acting. You're going to learn some interesting things about acting in this thematic section. Then the class ends with a viewing of the musical Hair. Hair is a powerful and political show about the transcendent power of love, sex, and drugs in the quest for peace. Since this is the final section of the class, I have not added a reading. I want you to have plenty of time to review your notes, make the most of your forum discussions, and study for your exam. All right, enjoy the material. So today's class, we're going to be talking about sex and drugs in the theater. I'm here with Stefan Kreit, who is a Montreal-based theater artist. Thanks so much for joining us, Stefan. So why don't you just jump on in and tell us about the work? And I see you have a book here.
Yeah, so there's been a book and a documentary that has been created from this play that was called Les Laboratoires Kreit, so let's say Kreit Laboratories. It was a series of 4 different shows during 1 year with my theater company called Momentum. Nathalie Claude is part of this theater company as well. I think you've seen Nathalie work a little bit. So there was 4 different shows, and it was all created around the idea of a scientific experience. So I was pretending being a doctor, so I had my little pin with Dr. Kreit and pretending I'm a doctor. But all the artistic process was supported by real scientific research and process. So consent form, a protocol, I got a real nurse on stage with me. So we were taking this seriously, but at the same time, I'm not a real doctor. So there was this kind of idea of what's real and what's not. And the main idea of this research was to explore altered state of consciousness on actors on stage to see if it would enhance their acting, their skills.
Okay, so you set out to do an experiment based on whether or not an altered state of consciousness by external factors would affect a performance.
Yeah,
so can you tell us what different devices you used to create these altered states?
So we had 4 different topics. The first one was with pain, so something around pain, and then the other one was around drugs. Another one, the topic was hypnosis, and the last one was sexual stimulation. So the 4 of them were, we had different actors each time, different plays, different scripts, but the protocol was always the same. So an actor would rehearse a bit of a piece, and then play it in front of the audience, then receive somehow the altered state of consciousness, the induction, let's say, and then redo the play again, so the audience could compare if there's any difference, because the audience was as well invited to write down their impression and note what difference they would see. And then the nurse would take vital signs, temperature, blood pressure, stuff before and after, in order to help me. I think I have some graphics somewhere to see if there's any specific results or curves that I could note about whether there's a difference for the actor in his nervous system, I would say, that is as impacted by the altered state of consciousness. Well, I started there was another theater company called the Grand Théâtre Émotif du Québec in Montreal. So the audience could compare if there's any difference, because the audience was as well invited to write down their impression and note what difference they would see. And then the nurse would take vital signs, temperature, blood pressure, stuff before and after, in order to help me. I think I have some graphics somewhere to see if there's any specific results or curves that I could note about whether there's a difference for the actor in his nervous system, I would say, that is as impacted by the altered state of consciousness. Well, I started there was another theater company called the Grand Théâtre Émotif du Québec in Montreal, and we did several plays in the same year, and one of them was called Nothing, Rien. And the idea was to ask actors to come as a casting, but we were looking for the actor who was doing the best nothingness, And so it was kind of a weird experience. Momentum, my theater company, is really into experimental theater and avant-garde stuff, so we're trying to experiment this idea of actors coming, like pretending it was a cast, and then doing nothing, and see who's the best actor doing nothing. And then it started this idea about experimenting on the actor, and mind-fucking the actor brain a little bit, like, okay, it's an actor, it's a play, you're hired, but you don't know exactly what you'll have to do. There's this uncertainty about your task as an actor, and I really liked this idea of using the actor as experimental object and experimenting from the actor, but using it live on stage and see how he would behave regarding some challenges he would have to do. So usually each laboratory was played 4 nights. There was 4 representations. Especially for the drugs one, I had some issues because, health issues, health concerns, I would say, around the actors, because asking them to do 4 nights in a row the same drug was kind of edgy and demanding. And then I had some issues legally as well, because I was wondering if after 1 or 2 nights some police could come or see what's going on in this show. A few years before, I had done a show called Nudity, and so all the actors were naked on stage, but the audience asked to be nude as well in order to see the show. So we did that for 2 nights, but the third night, something called Escouade de la Moralité, like morality, I didn't know it was still existing in Quebec, interrupt the show and ask us to stop, because they pretended that we were not respecting the law, we were in a public space or something. So, and then newspaper, radio show, talk show, everywhere it was like the big scandal. So I was kind of a little reluctant to recreate this vibe around my theater. So for drugs, especially, I did just one representation, and I did it in some sort of a private event. So it was on invitation only, and it was not in a theater. It was like in a basement somewhere, just to create more excitement for the audience to know that they're invited to something really unusual and special. So we had, I think, 7 actors. Each of them was a specific drug that was given to them. So we had marijuana, MDMA, mushrooms, Valium, Dilaudid, which is like something close from morphine for severe pain, and then alcohol. So like 6 actors, yeah. So each of them, same thing, would have to present an excerpt of their play.
Sorry, can I interrupt you there? So just to clarify for the students, so the 6 actors were in a scene together?
No, each of them would have a scene, and sometimes it was a monologue, sometimes it would be a dialogue, and then another actor would be hired just to do the scene with him or her. Specifically for this one, it was a little bit different to see how to pace the peak experience of the altered state of consciousness, because if you smoke marijuana or if you take MDMA, the peak experience won't be at the same time. So we did an evening experience with all the actors together, taking the drugs at the same time, and with the nurse, and then we timed when was the drug kicking in and when was the peak experience, so we could pace the show.
So they would do the scene sober first?
Yep.
So the audience would come and they would watch a series of excerpts, a series of scenes by 6 actors.
Exactly.
And then the actors would...
Some of them, because of the length of the duration of the drug to be activated in the body, some of them would have to take it an hour before, or maybe just right now. For the alcohol, it was a little different. We did it was a really short scene, like 1 minute, and then each time the actor would take a shot, and we did it like 7 or 8 times in a row, so we could see immediately the difference. And we had an actor who was a big guy, so his reaction to alcohol was different than this kind of tiny guy. So after 4 or 5 shots, the tiny guy was already having some difficulty to give his lines, and the other one was like straight solid. So and then same thing with the nurse, blood pressure or temperature, and to see vital signs, to see if there's a difference between before and after. So this one was with the alcohol. Marijuana was I think there's a picture, I'm not sure, it was taken, or in the documentary we could see it was taken with it was eaten but melted with
butter or something
like that. Yeah. So this one, had to wait a little shorter than MDMA. It took like, let's say, 30-40 minutes before the body would feel the activation. The night we did the experience before the show was really weird because everybody was on different drugs, so nobody was in the same mood. So someone would need heavy music, and someone was disturbed by the lightning, and someone wanted to touch on having some massage someone, and someone was in a strip. So it was really a weird night. And the girl who took Valium had a really bad experience on the day after. It was like physically, she was like a major crash, a breakdown. So I decided to not do it for real during the show. So each laboratory, there was always one actor who was pretending, but we wouldn't tell the audience. So at the end of the representation, we'd say, one of the actors pretended doing this experience. Who do you think it is? And tell us why. The hypothesis was that an altered state of consciousness would enhance the actor's skills. So that was the hypothesis. Was it true or not? At the end of my experience and at the end of the book, we can see that actually not really. But so the idea was really to see how this altered state of consciousness could create new sensitivity, subtlety in your acting. Especially for this one around drugs, it was not exactly. This is not what happened. It was more. Even though the actors were really trying hard to do their best, they were super distracted and confused and having laughters. And so it was kind of. Sometimes it always looked like a freak show, almost. Some actors just really not being able to gather himself together and do his lines. The one who was doing Dilaudid was the most impressive because Dilaudid is kind of some morphine. It's a painkiller, and he was doing. He was having to say some lines of a famous Quebecer poet. Claude Gauvreau was really like massive, some sort of poem, really like. And the drug just helped him so much. He was so focused, and he did an amazing delivery. It was really, really beautiful. Given that it was a scientific experience, I wanted to respect some consent habits or practice that was done in a scientific experience on humans.
So you're talking about consent, about methodologies or processes for gaining consent in the scientific world.
Every human or every medical scientific research who are using humans has to follow some codes or some protocol.
Because every time a new drug is introduced onto the market, there would naturally be a process where this would be experimented on humans. Right?
So I was respecting two things. One is called Code de Nuremberg, so Nuremberg Code, I guess, that has been described after the Second World War in order to respect the way you would behave or practice or experiment on actors. And the other one was called the Déclaration de Helsinki, so Helsinki Declaration, I guess, which is similar. So both of them were, I think we could find them in the books as well, so maybe you could find them and show them to your students. But there's specific rules about how you have to behave with actors. I had made them sign every of them like a consent form. I agree that this is what I'm going to do. I'll have to take this drug, this amount, this quantity. In either any time I feel that this is unsafe or I don't feel safe, I'm allowed to stop the experiment. And me as a doctor and the nurse, anytime we feel that this is getting dangerous or it could somehow damage your life or whatever, we'll stop the experiment as well. And so every actor has to sign the consent form for experience. And it was followed by another laboratory. It was supporting all this research with. Because I would write each time a super thick document around this is what we're going to do. This is how it's going to happen. This is the experience. This is the age and the gender of each actors. And so I was doing it seriously, even though it was kind of a fun and artistic experience.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So on the one hand, you're doing practice-based research where you're really trying to find out how these things affect the craft of the actor, and on the other hand, it seems like you're performing scientific experiments. Do you know what I mean? That it's kind of a send-up in some ways, but they're actually performing the elements of science. And I find that really interesting because when we look back at scientific history, we can see that performance is a huge element of it.
Right.
Like for example, if we look at the hysterics in the late 19th century, the kinds of experiments that were being done with women in institutionalized women in France, for example, and these women would be brought into the theater, the operating theater. We call that operating space, that exhibition space, a theater for a reason. These women would be brought into that theater and they would be subjected to experiments and to demonstrate the veracity of certain scientific concepts, right? And so what I find really interesting about what you're doing is you're replicating that. You're really heightening the theater of the theater of medicine, right? The medicinal theater.
And it's interesting because actually all these shows has been played in university or hospital. So I would never play in a theater, in a real theater actually. So we're in university classes or the auditorium of an hospital. So people would really feel this, what you're describing actually. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't realize that was the venue. That makes so much sense. And so that you're really putting this piece in front of an audience for their for circumspection, for their reflection as well, the way we do with a class, the way we do in universities. Oh, that's really interesting.
And the audience has always almost had a role to play because they had this formula, and so they would think like some scientists as well.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome. We're going to do this experience. Please give us our feedback in their own self.
Can you tell us a little bit about the work you're doing right now?
So I'm working more around this idea of working with edges. So how we could create safety when you have to do something that is really demanding. Either it's because it's including violence, including sexuality, including physical effort. How can you create safety with consent, with safe words, with creating a safe space? So I'm using some of the BDSM vocabulary and skills in order to create a safe space for actors to explore safely some sort of acting that could be super triggering actually, and then how you could feel safe doing it.
Hi class, I'm here with Michaela Washburn. Michaela is a Toronto-based Métis artist. She is an actor, a stand-up, improviser,
Host, spoken word artist, clown, workshop facilitator. Yeah, jack of all trades.
Jack of all trades. She's been nominated for 4 Dora Awards, which are very important theatre awards in Canada, and for the K.M. Hunter Award,
Artist Award, yeah.
and was just recently nominated for the Ontario Arts Council Indigenous Arts Award. So she might be winning another award very soon.
That would be lovely.
We're going to talk to you a little bit today about the concept of performing high. So the high of performing in this case, that high, that buzz that you get from performing. So thanks so much, Michaela, for coming to
I'm delighted to be
join
here.
the class.
This is wonderful.
What is that? What is it? What is the performance high?
I feel like it's adrenaline. I feel like it's almost a fight or flight, perhaps, similar to that. But I was just about to say, but without the terror. But that's actually not true. It can be terrifying. I find you can get a bit jittery, get a bit sweaty. Just it's high stakes, and you're very much in the present moment and very alert. Yeah.
That's one of the interesting things about this. And it really does feel like a buzz, right? It feels like a kind of elevated state. But what's interesting about it is it comes from almost being so in the moment, so incredibly in the moment that you lose touch with everything in the outside world.
Yeah, it can for sure. There are moments where even if you're distracted at first and worried, especially if you know someone's in the audience or those kinds of things, or sometimes you're like, did I forget something? I feel like I forgot something, and you can have all that. But what's fascinating to me is you can be in the story and so in the world and so in the character that sometimes you're like, wow, we're already intermission, and this portion of your life has just passed that you've repeated over and over and over again, but it's been brand new right here, and you're not caught up in any past of it because you're so just being in the next moment of it. It's really fascinating.
There are all these different things firing at the same time. So now I'm speaking particularly about acting. So like say acting in a play where you've memorized. So you've gone through rehearsal, you've memorized all these lines. So there's a part of your intellectual brain that is working really hard, but almost working on a deep level that you don't even know it's working because you know it so well. And then you're interacting live with your co-actors, with the audience. So there are all these things at play that really take you into almost like an ulterior reality, into another reality. Does that
Yes,
sound resonate with you?
absolutely. And then you have things, when I studied clown with John Turner, one of the things that we learned was a gift from the gods. So there are times, for example, on Saturday night, I'm in the show Animal Farm right now at Soul Pepper, and the elastic on my beak broke. And so you're immediately just, how do I deal with this? Because you can't do this. So you're just thrust into the reality of this moment and trying to be as present as you can, and how do you keep this on your face, and it's going to fall off, and everyone sees it falling off, and but it's fascinating. It's so fun. And that's also, some people think, oh no, but we got a standing ovation in the front row that night, because I think sometimes for people it's so live, it's so present, and it's unexpected.
Yeah, and that's a great thing to talk about because we're in this unusual situation where we're doing an online class about a live form theater, right? And so it's hard for us to exactly convey sometimes what those feelings are and what that relationship between the audience and the performers as well in a live performance. So it's great to hear you describe some of those things. There's also a kind of buzz that stays after the show as well, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're so adrenalized, and then it's the conversation with the audience. So imagine that for the last 2.5 hours, you've been having an animated, energized conversation with over 200 people, and you're breathing the same breath, and you're laughing, hopefully the actors aren't laughing, of course, but you're on the ride of this emotional wave together for however long, and then those people go home, and you're like, I need to go home and have some chips, just so like,
you can't just immediately go. There's not a clear trajectory from the performance state to back to real life. I mean, there is a trajectory, but it takes time, and so it is in a way like we can liken it a bit to a high, like a drug, because once you're on it, there's a process of coming down, coming down from it. Yeah. Did you? I wanted to know when you first experienced this high, or was it right away when you started out as a performer?
Probably, I think, because I also, I used to fantasize and talking to the hairbrush and accept my Oscar. So I think it existed in early rehearsals, even when I first started rehearsing that, how excited you get, and people are watching you, and it's an interesting thing. So I think early on when I started doing, whether it was at school or community theater or air guitar, grade 9, I think it's always been there, and I actually think it's also something that has driven me. It's been a juicy tidbit that I've moved towards as well, because there's certainly a ride in it.
Yeah, so it's a motivator, because you want to get that feeling, because it really is such a special feeling. So you also do a lot of improvising. So I wonder if you could talk to the class a little bit about the difference for you in terms of that feeling, because the stakes are always high with performing live, but when you're improvising, you don't have a script, you don't have anything.
Yeah.
And so you're just hoping.
Something good comes of it.
Yeah. And so can you talk to us a little bit about that feeling?
I think that the energy of improvisation, it feels like even if you kind of relax into it, for me anyway, it feels like that is kind of always underneath it. Where there are times where I'm doing theater and or film, and because I know it so well, I'll find that can calm down, and it won't be the same every time.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think that this high, or what we're talking about, contributes to the caliber of your performance? So I guess what I'm saying is, if on a night you go into the theater and you're getting ready, you go into the stage, and you don't feel it, do you think that's, because I know it's not always the same,
That's right,
You
it
know?
isn't.
But so do you feel like that there's a level, like that there's a state you need to get to in order to feel that you're connecting with the audience, or do you think that this is like a byproduct, or that there are many kinds of states that you can be in?
I feel like when you feel like you're not quite at that state, I feel like that's where training and experience and craft comes in. So ideally, if you feel like you've gotten to this state where it's optimum and you're having the best conversation and you're listening as deeply as you can and you're present and ready for anything should something happen and you have to improvise in a non-improvising context, I think you want to, whatever it is that helps you get to that place, I think it's ideal. What's the picture story that you're telling so that you have that always to refer to?
That's great. So you used visual imagery as a mnemonic device. And I think it's just a really interesting thing as students when you're trying to learn or memorize things, that I find that it's almost impossible to memorize something if you want to memorize something. And I'm not saying it's the best way to learn. Sometimes you do have to memorize things just for the sake of it. If you understand it, it's a lot easier to memorize.
100%. Shakespeare.
Yeah.
You don't have to impose things onto Shakespeare. If you read the text and you understand what it is and you use the punctuation for the tools that they are, it's so clear. It's so clear, and it evokes the emotion that it's calling for without you having to impose that. The text does the work. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, and great writing will do that. It'll do the work up to a certain degree.
Yes,
of course. But still need a great actor. Are there other places? Oh no, I want to keep going on this. I want to know about your preparation right before you go on stage.
Oh, sure.
So, or right before, or an hour or two leading up to it.
Yeah, I have quite a ritual that I've had for a long time, and I appreciate it. And one of the things that I do, so I get to work and I get into my bendy clothes, and I smudge that myself, and I smudge the whole space and all of our props and all, the space, and just for safety and a good conversation and playfulness, and just we all start fresh. Everybody starts fresh. And then I do a vocal warm up and I do a physical warm up. I say all my lines in the show. I sing all my songs in the show, whatever that is. Just kind of double check that everything is where it should be, and then go get ready.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It is.
Yeah, we've had a few artists on this class come in and visit us, and I think that's one of the things you might be getting the impression of. It's a lot. There's a lot of work involved in going onto the live stage. Are there places other than performing that you could say you've experienced this kind of like what we call that high in your life? Are there other times in your life that you felt that feeling or
Love.
It's
love. And whether it's, because I think we can fall in love with our friends. I think we fall in love with our friends all the time. And because I don't think falling in love necessarily has to be a sexual thing. I think it can be a flirtatious thing. But I think that experience of, whether it's a new friend or a dear friend or your partner or your lover, that energy of getting to see someone and spend time with them, that is the one place that's really reminiscent for me of that energy. Because it's theater, or when you're performing, it feels like a celebration, and especially live theater, it feels like a live celebration, and being part of that story and bringing people into your story and into your world and exchanging it, especially when you know it's going to make them laugh, especially when you know it's going to move them. It's so exciting. It's so exciting, and that's what it reminds me of, is that excitement and thrill of relationship and being around people who really bring out the best in you, and how that elevates your self-esteem and your energy, and just knowing that that's going to happen is exciting. It's exciting making to know that you get to spend time with people who bring that out in you. Yeah.
And so there's this collective energy, and that goes back to this topic of the live forum, which we're not doing right now.
I know,
We're
it's
just
so
telling you about.
fascinating.
But the idea that we pick up energy from other people, and that contributes to this buzz as well.
Absolutely.
Like certainly the audience, when you've had a really great show, and you can feel that the audience is connected with you, and they're lifting you up, like they're lifting you up. It really feels like, and maybe that's why we use the word high.
Right.
Like as a performance
Like
high.
exalted in some way.
Yeah, that it actually like lifts you up off the ground, and great.
Yeah.
So now you all want to be actors. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Michaela.
Thanks, Moni, for having me.
Yeah,
What
thanks
a
for coming. That
treat.
was great.
Yeah.
Okay, see you soon.